What's going on, everybody? This is Nick Lawson from Squad Sports. We're really excited to be supporting the Free Agent Friday series. A lot of great talent out there. Without further ado, this is the next free agent you should be signing with your sports team.
Well, we're back for another Free Agent Friday, and I got David Gugliotti with me. How bad did I butcher that up? It
that was all right. It's Gugliotti, but that was close enough.
was close. It just rolled.
Good.
It rolled. All right. Well, I should have went with just David G.
There you
but
go.
I didn't
That
want
works
to do
too.
that to you. No, thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Let's kind of go through your college experience. I mean,
Sure.
obviously, I'm guessing maybe Oregon based on everything I see on the screen.
Yeah. So my former position was the director of esports at the University of Oregon. Prior to getting hired there, I was a student, grad student, getting my MBA in sports marketing. Been living here for about 3 years, originally from Connecticut. So it's good to be a Duck.
Whole way across the country.
Yeah.
What drew you out there?
So I had some family out here, so I was always kind of familiar with Oregon and the Ducks. And when they would come home sometime to visit other family members back home in Connecticut in the fall, we'd watch football together and rooting for the Ducks and stuff like that. But when I realized that I wanted to go to grad school, I knew I wanted to get into like a sports marketing type program, sports business, sports marketing, something in the sports field. And doing my research on different schools, UO has one of the best ones in the country. So I wanted to make it a reality, and here we are.
What made you kind of want to get into the sports side of things?
Sports and specifically esports has been a major piece of my life, going as far back as I can remember. It was football, basketball, lacrosse for me growing up. And after practice, after all that, I would get into gaming because it was a way for me to kind of let my body relax, but keep my mind active and my mind moving with stuff like that instead of just watching TV or something like that. If there was a football game on, I'm watching the football game, right? But if it wasn't on, then I would try to do something a little more mentally active, like playing video games and stuff like that.
While you were in school, did you do any internships or anything?
Yeah, so for undergrad, I did an internship at a nonprofit. For grad school, I interned at 2 different esports organizations and then did an internship with UO itself.
Nice. I mean, esports is like blowing up. Like my son is 16, knows way more than me.
Sure.
But it's fascinating. We are launching a gaming company. I've owned sports teams for like 20 years now, and he's 16. It's finally something we can do together.
Yeah.
But so we'll pick your brain on it some.
Sure.
But so tell me about the internships that you did with esports teams.
Yeah, so they were both in between my first and second year of grad school. One of them was like a social media manager, social media marketing position where they would come to me with ideas and I'd say, hey, that's a good idea. Here's how we can engage better on it. Or that's not a good idea. Let's kind of revamp that a little bit. That one was very short, very, very basic. The other one was like a startup organization where it was a little bit of everything, kind of like what I did after I got hired by UO here. But it was some marketing, some management, some finance, kind of a general like advisory, I guess you could say, position to make sure they were kind of checking the boxes along stuff, working with some really, really great people and made sure that they were keeping their boat going in the right direction for what they were doing to launch their new platform.
How is your skill level actually gaming?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm not the greatest.
Not
I put
really.
like when I was.
Could you play professionally?
No,
Okay.
not even
Yeah.
close. Not even
Right.
close. No. That's why I'm not the
That's why
coach
you're on
of
the
our
ops
teams.
side. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people like when working here at UO as the director, a lot of them would think I was our coach, and I'm not. I'm not teaching these players anything that they don't already know. They're way better than I am. I'm the director, not the coach. I don't actually improve their skill level. I make sure everything around our whole program worked. I'm okay. I can hold my own, but I'm definitely nowhere near good enough to go pro.
So tell me about, with University of Oregon, how was this an established program or were you kind of helping launch it?
Yeah. So I basically created it.
Nice.
When I was a grad school student here, it was just a League of Legends club at the time, and it only had a few people in it. And when I first got involved, mission number 1 was to grow it and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's kind of what we set out to do. We made it we changed the name. We kind of rebranded to make it more indicative of everybody, because it wasn't just League of Legends players. Yeah, that was like our primary, 75% of our group, but we had Call of Duty players, we had Overwatch players, we had, players of all sorts of different types of games, not necessarily just for competitive purposes either. The community and like get together and hang out and have fun was a big piece of it as well. So in between my first and second year of grad school here is a 2-year program. In between the first and second year, I pulled the competitive teams out of the student club, and we found a house for them in club sports, where that way they could be served a little bit better for their competitive purposes. That way it allowed the club to be way more focused on engaging the community, having fun, hanging out, doing stuff like that. And then after I graduated and got hired to be the director, it was my job to basically build the program officially at the school from scratch, from the ground up. So it was then taking our competitive teams out of club sports, where they just found their home, to be in the new esports program here. It was sort of engaging our community instead of as like a student level, as the school now engaging it. It was setting up our broadcast classes. It was building out the esports lounge. It was all the stuff that goes into making a successful collegiate esports program.
So where did you get all the knowledge to even undertake that?
Yeah, well, through my life experience in the world of gaming. My best friend was a professional Call of Duty player. Okay. So that's kind of what exposed me way back to, hey, this kind of organized, structured, competitive gaming can be a thing. Then it was working with the students and seeing how big of a community. I mean, gaming is a regular part of life for everybody now, right? Whether it's somebody that's a hardcore competitor trying to go professional, or it's grandma playing a cell phone game, solitaire on her cell phone, right? It's kind of a regular piece of mainstream society now. And it was, how do we bring those students that didn't have a home on campus back to connect with campus again? Gaming is a great way. There was no home for gaming on campus, right? You can go to a football game, you can go rock climbing, you can go to the craft center, you can do all these things on campus. There was no home for gaming, and that was part of my job, was to create that home for a huge portion of our students.
So did you guys get to a point where you started generating any revenue from it at all?
Yeah, no. So our esports lounge opened up on February 20th, which was about 4 weeks before the school shut down for Corona. So right when our like physical space opened up, where they could start potentially seeing some revenue, it got shut down right away. And just to be clear, like the initiative wasn't a revenue generator. Okay. It was a student experience booster at the school. Just like, there's the radio station and club sports, like, right, those aren't to make money for the school. It's to make students have something to attach to, have a better experience at college. That's also going to help, especially with the growth and the explosion of esports. That's going to bring a lot more students to the school.
Yeah,
right?
no,
So
definitely.
it's not a direct revenue generator, I guess.
Well, I didn't know, like, I know some of the schools have, like, I think you guys might even have like Learfield or somebody like that sells partnerships for different sports, or
yeah. So athletically, we have IMG Learfield. For the school, we have Fermata. We are not part of athletics, so we actually got to do some of that on our own. So part of my job was to, I had a $0 budget, was to figure out how are we going to get mice and keyboards and headsets and jerseys and backpacks and all the cool stuff that we needed. And some of that was through partners and sponsors that I generated on my own through the program. So a lot of that was kind of boots on the ground, making sure we were following the regulations and stuff that the school had, right? Like, hey, we're a Nike school. We couldn't get Adidas on board, I'm sure, as much as they would have loved to. We're a Pepsi school. We couldn't get, Red Bull on board as much as they tried to. So, I kind of had to play within the rules, and especially being a new program that a lot of people don't know a whole lot about, or how the industry works. There was definitely some challenges there, but everything was a success well beyond what we expected for the first year, even considering COVID.
So I take it you're probably looking for something in esports?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's where I want to make my home.
Any open to any location, or you need to be on the West Coast or Oregon?
Yeah, as long as it's within the U.S., I want to stay in the U.S. As long as it's within the country, I'm fine with wherever. East Coast, West Coast, North, South, doesn't matter to me.
What was the biggest challenge that you overcame, launching that?
Yeah, just doing it all without having a blueprint in place. I had to make my own playbook. I had to call my own plays at the line of scrimmage and make audibles where I needed to do. I make a football reference to everything. Yeah. I had to do all that, live and on the fly. The analogy I always used was we were flying the plane while we were building it. So something would pop up and it's like, okay, let's do that. All sorts of, I never worked in higher ed, right? So I had to learn the processes and procedures and how to navigate that. You know, I had a sponsorship offer from a company, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I found out that would have broken like a giant contract with the school. So I had to decline it, which hurt because, you know, we need money to do cool things. You know, you see a lot of other schools, you know, they're hiring coaches and giving away scholarships and doing all this crazy stuff that we weren't. And because we didn't receive that direct funding from the school outside of building the esports lounge. So part of my job was to figure out where does that come from. And now with all these, you know, restrictions in place, it made it very, 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 very challenging to do. You know, I couldn't go to donors to try to get money. I wasn't allowed to ask people for money, which a lot of other schools are doing, you know, funding stream. I was like, why don't we do that? And like, hey, you can't. So it was learning, you know, those, you know, working at such a large institution like UO, it was learning how to play on that field and do everything appropriately, knowing that we were kind of the new guys on campus and we had to kind of be extra careful to make sure we didn't mess anything up.
What do you think is the biggest asset or skill set that you're bringing to the table for a new job?
Yeah, just leadership. You know, being entrusted to build this program from scratch, basically by myself, showed a lot of confidence in my abilities as a leader, as a trailblazer, to take us where we want to go. You know, building the voice of what we wanted UO Esports to be, building the brand of what we wanted UO Esports to be. You know, those were kind of two of the biggest things that I focused on was how do we create our own voice and our own brand and our own identity within something that's already exists in the collegiate space and is very powerful, right? Everybody in the world knows what UO is, right? It's a big time school like that. Mm-hmm. It's not like I was at a very small community college where, you know, outside of a 20-mile radius, people don't really know what that is. Yeah. So how do I make us stand out amongst our own peers, whether it's, you know, athletics, the softball team or the basketball team, whether it was other programs at the school? How do I make our voice count? How do I brand us appropriately while also staying authentic? Authenticity is the single most important thing when it comes to esports. Bringing me in, someone that was involved in the industry as a player, as a competitive player, as a community member, now transitioning to that professional role, kind of helped us stay authentic and on track. You see a lot of colleges starting esports programs and they can't even spell esports right. They're throwing a dash in it or a random capital letter, and it just, you know, it's not authentic, and people can tell and people make fun of it, right? People in the gaming and esports world are very intelligent, and they're quick to respond favorably or unfavorably to things when they sniff out something that is either A, authentic, or B, not authentic. They react very swiftly and very accordingly.
What do you think is the biggest area you need to work on?
I think just having, so my in between undergrad and grad school, I intentionally immersed myself in different aspects of business. I spent some years in sales, did some years in finance, did some years in operations. So I think it's going deeper with those where I'm pretty well-rounded. But I don't have, 8 years experience in this one specific highly specialized spot. So, looking at my role here as a director, it's kind of like an athletic director, but I was also our finance person and our marketing person and our social media person and this, that, and the other thing.
So I mean, you were typically the GM basically.
Yeah, that's to make a sports analogy. I was our GM.
Yeah.
Where, I had control over every single thing that we did. But just from a professional standpoint, I don't have 9 years experience of social media marketing.
What kind of budget did you work with there?
None.
So you just had to raise everything like through in kind and just, however you could?
Yeah, basically outside of the construction of our facility, the Esports Lounge, and purchasing a few small supplies for it. Everything else we had to go through our partners and sponsors. So essentially it was on a $0 budget, which was quite the challenge to, when other schools are trying to poach our competitive players, hey, we're going to give you, $20,000 a year in scholarship. I'm like, see you later. Have fun.
But you guys didn't even offer scholarships?
No, we didn't have any funding to do that.
Wow.
So we're one of the very few schools that doesn't. And despite, some of those challenges, I mean, we have an amazing program and we won a bunch of championships. We're going up against, we just won a Valorant championship and beat UCI. UCI is like the golden child of college esports. Everybody wishes they could be UCI. They have scholarships and staff and trainers and coaches and all this crazy stuff. And we took them down on the championship and it felt pretty good.
I mean, you got me convinced. I think I'm ready to hire you. I mean, I need the help. We're going to talk after this.
All right. That sounds good. I mean, you said your son plays good. What's his game of choice?
I know he does Call of Duty, Valorant.
Yeah. You get a scholarship. I mean, he can go
anything.
get a
He's
scholarship for
16
that.
right now.
Yeah.
So,
Perfect.
you know,
He
my
can definitely get a
background's
scholarship.
minor league sports, and I'm
Yep.
trying to understand the esports business. I don't understand it. I think once I understand it, I can turn it into something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I need somebody like you
We'll talk.
that can do it. So,
We will talk.
so it's so cool, and I think it's just going to explode over the
Absolutely.
year after year. It's just growing. So
there's a really interesting thing that has happened in esports that has happened in almost all traditional sports. Like growing up, did you play any sports?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you first get into your sports?
I mean, like I got interested in sports probably from TV and then school.
And then did a parent or a guardian sign you up for a league?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Did you do that with your son too?
Yeah, I did.
Right.
I don't. I was in high school, but yeah.
Right. So that's called generational pass down, right? The parent passing it down to their child. That hasn't happened yet in esports because most people in it are in their teens, 20s, and 30s. And if they do have kids, they're probably very young still.
Yeah.
So
10,
that
15
exponential
years.
growth has yet to even happen yet. So as big as it's blowing up now, especially with COVID, advancing that even more. I mean, once generational pass down happens, it's going to be like the biggest thing. So there's a lot of growth that is still going to come in the short term and especially in the long term.
What is a fun fact about you?
Ooh, fun fact about me. I once saved a retired nun's life.
What?
Yeah,
So tell me about that. How'd that happen?
So it was over summer when I was in undergrad. I worked for my family construction company. We built basketball courts. So I built a whole ton of basketball courts all over the Northeast. We were in New York, in New Rochelle, and I went out to like lunch to go get a sandwich or something from the deli nearby. And on the way back, I saw this elderly woman, very elderly woman, sitting on the ground in front of like her lawn area, like kind of like leaning up against like a brick wall, like her, outside in front of her yard. And first I was like, that's kind of weird looking, but she seemed all right. She was just kind of chilling. So I kept going and I was like, something's just not right about that. And I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw like blood coming down from her neck area. And I like slammed on the brakes, hopped out of the truck, ran over to her. She was a retired nun that would go on her afternoon walk, like around their, like, I forgot the name of like their nun house area, like the block around there. And she slipped and fell and hit her like chin neck area on the brick wall and like gashed it open. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh, I needed to save you. So called 911. Like, I was like, okay, like, I'm gonna stay with you. She's like, go to this house right here. We have a medical team in there. They'll get there before the ambulance. So like, I run over there. I'm like pounding on the door. I'm like, help, like, you need help. So they sent people out. The ambulance got there. I left before, like, once, their staff came out, I had to get back to work. My uncle, of course, yelled at me for being late coming back.
Oh yeah, sure, you saved somebody.
Thanks, Uncle Jim. Old school Italians for you. So she was fine. She got little stitches. She was good to go. A few days later, on that same job site, I put a nail through my arm while I was taking some wood out, and so I was in like the nurse's office getting it, because it was at a college campus, so I had to fill out an accident report, and they sent me down to like the infirmary to get it cleaned out. Right, it was a nail in my arm, so I had to get it cleaned out. And while I was in there, they're like, oh, there's this kid that saved this nun the other day. I was like, oh, it was like on the corner there? Like, yeah. I was like, yeah, that was me. They're like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, that was me. She fell, she cut her open, and like it knocked on there. Like, oh my God, like you need to stay here. And like all of a sudden, like it was like a religious college. I forgot the name of it. Like the lead priest and like 8 of his nuns were like, you're a hero. We've been praying for. It was like the wildest thing ever to experience that in the middle of building a basketball court. But,
that is pretty cool, especially like, in the future, obviously they're talking about it, and it's like, oh wow, what are the odds of all that?
Yeah, that was a wild week for me down there in New Rochelle. So that's fun fact on it.
Well, David, I appreciate you joining me, man. We could spend a lot of time with what you've done. So hopefully some people got a good taste of your experience, and hopefully we'll get you back in the saddle somewhere soon.
Yeah, definitely hope so too. Whether it's with another college, a pro organization, a brand in the space, I just want to make a difference and be an impact player for them.